We are going to talk about formulas. Formulas is such a fundamental part of dealing with Excel or working with Excel. A formula begins with either a plus or an equal sign. You type it into the cell. That's one way to get it into the cell. You can also copy from another place that has a formula. You can also type it into the formula bar. Formulas have references, and you can define those references by either using the arrow keys. You can click the cells. You can click cells or references on other worksheets in the same workbook. You can also reference cells and other worksheets in other workbooks. So formulas. We have a list of mathematical operators here: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponentiation, and then three numbers. We're going to build some simple formulas, beginning with one of the ways to do it, which is just to type it into the cell. Now, in an earlier movie, we learned about cell addresses. This is where the cell addresses come into play. Since I'm building a formula, I'm going to begin it with an equal sign. And there's the number 4 in cell G6, so I'm going to reference cell G6, and I'm going to add the value that's in G7. And when I reference those two cells, we get a color coding here to sync up the cells that are being referenced with the cells that I'm inputting and defining into the formula. So when I add these two cells together, what I'm actually doing is adding the content that's contained within those two cells. 4 plus 2 equals, Control Enter, 6. So when we build a formula, there's a distinction between the formula itself and the result that the formula generates. In the formula bar, we see the formula equal G6 plus G7, and in the cell that contains that formula, we see the result, which is 6. So this relationship is maintained whether we're building the formula in the cell or we're building the formula in the formula bar, which is another way to do it. Equal G6 plus G7 plus G9. Control Enter. And that total is 13. So I can also build the formula, and I'm going to down arrow once, beginning with an equal sign, by selecting the cells by clicking on them, and then entering a mathematical operator. This time I'm going to do a subtraction, the content from G6 minus the content in G7, Control Enter. So at this point, the neat thing about the way Excel is structured when you're building these formulas is the fact that when the values in the reference cells change, so do the results of the formulas that are referencing those cells. So you can begin to see where you can build these mathematical relationships between different components of your worksheet, different data, and have it update relative to what the values are that are contained within the reference cells. Another way to build a formula, I'm going to begin it with an equal sign again, is to use the arrow keys. I'm arrowing up to the right. Now I'm going to multiply times the other referenced cell, and I should get 20. So there's also a way to reference cells that are contained in other worksheets and even in other workbooks. And the easiest way to do that is to reference the cell, and I'm going to begin with formula with an equal sign, by clicking on it. So this is obviously in the same worksheet, but I'm going to add this to the value that's contained in sheet 2, and I'm going to select sheet 2, click on cell C7 to add 1000, Control Enter, to 10. The formula bar shows the formula. The reference cell on the current worksheet is G6. That's added to the cell C7 that's contained on sheet 2. And the syntax for the sheet reference is just as you see it, sheet 2 with an exclamation point, and then following that with the cell that's referenced on that sheet. I'm going to do the same thing, begin a formula, and reference this value. And even though this is a value that's derived from a formula, it also can be used in other formulas. And I'm going to add this to a value that's contained in another workbook. So I'm going to add, go to View, switch windows to Book 1, select cell B4, Control Enter, and I've added the value that's in cell B4 on sheet 1 exclamation point on book 1 that has the Excel suffix XLSX. And that is contained within brackets. So the workbook has the name with the Excel extension in brackets, and the worksheet has the name of the worksheet, followed by an exclamation point, and then the reference cell B4 follows that. You see some dollar signs before the B and before the 4. That makes this an absolute reference, and we're going to talk about absolute and relative references in an upcoming movie. So that's building a formula. We built a formula in a couple of different ways. We first began it with an equal sign. You can also begin it with a plus sign. You can type it directly into the cell. You can type it into the formula bar. You can use the arrow keys to define the reference cells. You can click on the cells to define which cells are referenced in the formula. And you want to use that method to reference cells that are contained within other worksheets and within other workbooks.